seconds and counting. 25 seconds and counting. We are still go. 20 seconds. Guidance alert. The guidance system now going internal. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon to viewers in Europe and Africa, and good morning to the vast majority of my viewers in the Western Hemisphere. Good very early morning to viewers in the Pacific Rim, India. Welcome to the Angry Astronaut, and here we are about to land on the moon again. These things are all of a sudden happening with a lot more frequency than we're accustomed to anyway. This frequency of moon landings was a reality back during the time of Apollo, but guess what? It's happening again. Finally, we've been waiting for this to transpire. We've been waiting to hopefully get going with this with Artemis, and I'll tell you, it was tough. There was a lot of hiccups in the process, but it looks like finally things are moving forward in the right direction. Where's everybody checking in from? We have 83 people or so at least on the mainstream, and I know we may have some folks on the vertical stream as well. Hello, Captain Peter Quinn. Hope you're doing well today. 45 on vertical. Hello, folks on the YouTube Shorts side of things. We've only recently started live streaming over there and have had a lot of interest. Very happy about that because we're talking a lot of new viewers. So welcome, folks. A lot of younger folks, which I'm super excited about, including people who don't necessarily know what Artemis is. So anyway, we've got Hailing Island, Nottinghamshire. We have Tampa Bay. Hello, Manchester. And hello, London. I'm going to be in London actually day after tomorrow. Hello, South Africa, and another London. Hello, North Central Illinois, New York. And we also have Florida and Newcastle upon Tyne, Branson, Missouri, and Hungary. Hello, Romania, and hello, Clifton. Hey, Damien. I hope you're doing well today. Hello, Sacramento and Australia and Hawaii. Thanks very much for joining us on the YouTube Short side. Hello, Slovakia. Hello, Santa Barbara, California. And what we got? Another South Africa. We got Vancouver in Germany, Tucson, Arizona, Newcastle upon Tyne. Once again, lots of viewers in Britain, which is a typical thing. I have a lot of British support on this channel, and one of the reasons why I live in Britain is because of all the support I've got over here. Hello, Norway, and hello, John Morgan. Thank you so much for the tenor. Yes, indeed, Ariane 6 about to lift off. We are actually monitoring that launch right now. If something weird happens with that launch, we may flip over to that briefly to bring you that coverage. However, if it just goes smoothly, then we're probably not going to bring you anything because it's boring. It's a deployment of a military satellite, meaning that Arianespace doesn't show us a whole lot of their launches anyway. They're going to show us even less of this one because it's a military satellite. Hello, Luxembourg and Cape Town, Evansville, Indiana, and Massachusetts. Hello, California. Really appreciate you checking in today. Preparation H for Apophis. Thanks very much. Newcastle upon Tyne. Hello, local pub and North Carolina. Really appreciate you guys joining us here today. Thanks a lot. So we are waiting for Intuitive Machines. Intuitive Machines should be going live in about 9 minutes or so. Once again, 8 minutes. Okay, so what we have, again, this is what's called the CLPS series of missions for the Artemis program. Artemis is humanity's return to the moon, except this time, at least the plan this time, is to establish a moon base, a space station orbiting the moon, a lot more permanent presence than we did the last time around. But these missions are robotic missions designed to gather as much information as possible about the moon, things that we may not have learned the last time that we were there, things that are going to impact lengthy stays there. Because the last time, Apollo astronauts were only there for a few days at a time. Now we're talking weeks, maybe even months on the moon, which means a lot of solar radiation, a lot of cosmic rays, extreme cold at night. The moon at night is one of the coldest places in the universe once it gets cut off access from the sun, especially as after it's had days and days of being isolated from the sun. It gets ridiculously cold there, meaning that life support becomes a real challenge in these environments. And so therefore we need to learn as much as we can from robotic spacecraft first, before we move on to a human space flight. That being the case, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of information on this spacecraft. Intuitive Machines has landed a vehicle like this on the moon before. The last time they did it, though, it wasn't perfect. It broke a couple of landing legs because it's LiDAR, the LiDAR being a laser guidance system designed to help it to guide it down to the moon, to determine the lay of the land, the terrain, to make sure it doesn't land on a big rock or on a hill, something like that. Unfortunately, that LiDAR was not functioning properly, so they had to use a backup experimental LiDAR system that was on the spacecraft at the time, that NASA had put on just by chance. They used that; it didn't work as well, and so the lander came down quite hard, broke a couple of its landing legs, and fell over on its side. Was still able to carry out a lot of its mission, but it was far from a perfect mission. So, in any event, this time, this rover has the ability, or rather, this lander has the ability to explore the moon a bit better than the last one did. It has something on board it called the Micronova hopper on board. It is very small. This thing is very lightweight, but it can operate up to 25 kilometers away from the landing site, and that's very important because this lander is setting down in the lunar South Pole region. This is where the lunar ice is, that all important lunar ice that we are going to need in order to set up long-term habitation on the moon. Not going to be able to do that without it being able to exploit that lunar ice, because of course you get valuable oxygen from water. Of course you get drinking water out of the whole thing. Who knows? There might be some money in that. Bottle this stuff and bring it back home, sell it for $1 million a bottle or something. Who knows? But in any event, from a practical standpoint, also the hydrogen and oxygen can be used to make hydrolox, which is a very common rocket fuel. A lot of things you can use ice for. And so as a result, this hopper will be exploring around, and also it will deploy it will also deploy. I'm sorry, have I gone off, producer? We okay? Okay. All right. So in any event, that's what we have in terms of a hopper. This thing can hover, can travel some distance. It actually has sort of cell phone communications on board to communicate back to the lander itself. There's also a rover on board, and also quite a number of experiments on board, many of which are oriented towards this lunar ice. It's very, very important. So once again, are we getting? I'm not. I've got somebody telling me that there's a loss of audio, but I'm not seeing it in the chat. Um, in any event, yeah, some people saying it sounds good. Yeah, not not sure. Uh, And there's a question, does this mission have a video camera? It actually has several video cameras, but there's a very good chance that we are not going to see the landing as it happens. This mission has the same problem that the Firefly mission had, and that is limited bandwidth. And that internet bandwidth is absolutely crucial to provide the necessary data, control information, that sort of thing back to mission control. It's crucial that they have give an enormous amount of priority to this type of data over real-time streaming 4K video. So all that being the case, good. I'm glad to hear that audio seems good, at least for the vast majority of the viewers. Yeah, right. We've got some folks, some of our Patreon folks are listening to me over Discord, and the Discord audio is not quite as good. So in any event, however, on the other side of things, if just a little quick plug, if you are a Patreon supporter and have access to Discord, we can actually interact on Discord sometimes during these broadcasts. So that's one of a number of benefits to Patreon supporters. You can be a Patreon supporter for as little as 10 cents a day. Details in the description. Okay, so once again, getting back to, boy, we're going to be going live with Intuitive Machines here in just a second. So, and this again is super important to them because, as I said, they had a bit of a problem with that first landing. It went pretty well, but not perfectly. And so now that Firefly has set the bar super high, given the fact that they landed so incredibly well, and they also landed incredibly well on their first attempt, now Intuitive Machines has to answer. Again, this is competition, which is good. NASA didn't have this before during Apollo. They had anointed aerospace companies that would build these spacecraft and send them, and they had guaranteed contracts. Now they have a number of companies who are competing for the business. They have Intuitive Machines, they have Firefly, and they also have Astrobotic, who launched the first CLPS mission, but unfortunately that failed almost immediately after launch. Although they managed to salvage a lot of it, they did manage to at least get some of the experiments carried out in space, and they managed to get it at least partially functional. I have just to give some props to the Astrobotic team to have accomplished as much as they did with what was essentially a broken spacecraft. But nevertheless, they have to answer as well, and they're going to be answering later this year when they send a huge lander, much bigger than any of the other ones we have seen thus far. A very big lander to the surface of the moon, and it will be carrying a sizable rover. Not the rover it was originally supposed to carry. Originally, it was supposed to carry a rover called the Viper, a very ambitious, resilient rover designed to explore the craters of the lunar South Pole looking for ice. But unfortunately, NASA canceled it after spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the damn thing. They canceled it. It is a very unpopular decision, but nevertheless, they went and did that. And so Astrobotic, however, got another customer, another company that had an experimental rover that they wanted to put on the moon. And guess what? They're on board instead. And very exciting, very, very good that they managed to get that other customer. And NASA still has a guaranteed money that they're supposed to be paying for the mission anyway. So it'll be an important mission regardless, just not as big as we would hope it would be. All right. Hello, Netherlands, by the way. Oh, looks like we are starting to get going here. We got the starting to get some introduction going here. I think probably some proprietary music. So we're going to wait until they're done with the intro, and then we will bring them live. Again, the showing the IM-1 mission. Again, largely successful, but not totally successful. And now IM-2, big moment for Intuitive Machines. Big moment for CLPS, big moment for the United States, because it's the first ever attempt from the US to ever land anything at the lunar South Pole. Let's go ahead and bring Intuitive Machines on to the audio.
Of Intuitive Machines.
And I'm Leah Cheshire with NASA Communications. This flight is conducted under contract with NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative. With Artemis, we are returning to the moon to conduct groundbreaking scientific discoveries and technological advancements. And just like IM-1, the second mission with Intuitive Machines is helping us get there. As you may know, it's been an exciting week for lunar exploration as another CLPS mission just landed 4 days ago. Today, we are going back to the lunar South Pole with another commercial company.
And Leah and I are at Intuitive Machines' facility here in Houston, just down the street from NASA's Johnson Space Center. About 6 hours ago, our lander named Athena completed her descent orbit insertion, or DOI, burn. That main engine firing started lowering Athena's altitude towards the lunar surface in preparation
Producer,
for landing.
can we pump up their audio a bit?
Their entire team, their families, friends, and stakeholders are all watching about 10 minutes down the road from Mission Control at the Lone Star Flight Museum, waiting for Athena's final engine burn to the surface.
Now that DOI, or descent orbit insertion, is complete, Athena is operating autonomously, but flight controllers still have the option to make some adjustments. The lander is expected to coast from 100 kilometers above the surface down to about 10 kilometers, and then she's expected
we have
to
it cranked
fire her
as loud
main
as we
engine
can.
for powered
Apparently,
descent.
as there's
That's
an
letting
audio
final
issue.
engine burn all the way through to
Apparently,
touchdown.
there's an audio
We
issue
have
on their
made
side.
some
We have it
late
cranked as high as
changes
it'll
to
go.
PDI's profile to accommodate for some uncertain variability with recent landing measurements. We now expect PDI pitchover to happen about 450 meters above the lunar surface versus the originally planned 400 meters. We're doing this to allow a little extra time for flight controllers to confirm and manually screen altitude measurements before ingesting those measurements into the navigation filter. We do have additional navigation aids on this flight that were not available to us back in our first mission for IM-1. Now let's take another look back inside of Nova Control. Our mission and activity directors are sitting at the top left of your screen, and they're supported by about a dozen additional flight controllers surrounding them in this circular Mission Control Operations Center. It will take the entire team, including a dozen backroom support staff, to land Athena today, Leah.
If we receive confirmation that Athena has touched down, the lander will go through several measures to make sure its liquid methane and liquid oxygen engine is safe. And then flight controllers will prioritize vehicle health data before sending images, approximately 2 hours after landing.
And right now, flight controllers are monitoring Athena's health and trajectory ahead of her autonomous landing sequence. That begins with powered descent initiation at approximately 11:16 a.m. Central Time for a landing at approximately 11:30 a.m. Central. From this angle, you can see a large monitor on the wall inside of Mission Control. What they're looking at is up on your screen right now. It's the room's situational awareness tool called the Viz, directly in front of the mission and activity directors.
The Viz is an animation representing real-time telemetry data feeding into Nova Control. Nova Control receives the data and runs it through a video game software, then generates a visualization of that data. It's a useful tool for keeping track of what Athena is doing in space. The white line you see right now is pointing to the moon. There are also some other color lines you might see pop up, like a blue line, that's the past and intended trajectory. The yellow and the green lines are pointing toward the sun and the earth, respectively. And at different points during landing, you might see some different color cones appear. Those are antenna arrays used for line-of-sight communication back to Earth. We're going to show the Viz periodically throughout this show to check in on Athena, and we intend to leave the Viz up during landing to give you the most accurate information possible.
And Leah, let's go ahead and use that tool now. We have a screen off to the side here, and it looks like Athena is about 72 kilometers above the lunar surface, continuing to decrease her altitude over the next hour until firing her engine one more time for landing. Again, that landing time is expected at 11:31 Central Standard Time, 12:31 Eastern. The countdown clock at the top of your screen is counting down to that time, and we expect to remove the countdown clock approximately 2 minutes before the landing opportunity. Now, getting to this moment has been quite the journey, especially over the past 7 days in space since liftoff from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center.
Athena lifted off at 7:16 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket on February 26th. Approximately 43 minutes later, Athena entered a translunar orbit, which is a direct shot at the moon. Over the next few days, Athena completed small engine firings to refine her trajectory before flight controllers commanded lunar orbit insertion on March 3rd to place the lander approximately 100 kilometers, or about 62 miles, above the lunar surface. For 3 days in lunar orbit, she has prepared to make her journey down to the lunar surface.
The journey to low lunar orbit took firing Athena's liquid methane and liquid oxygen engine 4 times.
We got a big
including
crowd
one
today,
7.5
guys,
minute burn
especially
to get
on
into
the
moon's orbit.
on the
Over the last
vertical
24
side,
hours,
the
Athena
short
has
side.
maintained
Welcome,
her
everybody.
trajectory in low lunar orbit, waiting for suitable lighting conditions on the moon's surface to begin her autonomous descent to Mons Mouton, the designated landing site for the IM-2 mission near the south pole of the moon. And we did get to see some of that video, Leah. Rugged, but potentially the future of humanity down there on the South Pole.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what we find once we get there. And of course, this mission is called IM-2 for a reason. Just over a year ago, on February 22nd, 2024, Intuitive Machines became the first American commercial company to land on the lunar surface, touching down at the South Pole of the moon in Malapert A. The Nova C-class lunar lander was known as Odysseus. It broke a piece of landing gear as it touched down and tipped over, but still delivered and operated the payloads aboard for their intended duration. Now, due to lighting conditions at the South Pole, lunar landings in that area are limited for how long they can operate. The spacecraft gathered solar power for 7 days prior to shutting down and completing the mission. Our joint coverage today will follow Athena through her descent and landing on the lunar surface, carrying 10 payloads with her, including 3 from NASA. This mission is enabled under a task order with NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative. Here's more on how this project operates under Artemis.
Yeah, we just had we got, unfortunately, some copyright music going on right now. So real quick, the Intuitive Machines lander got here a lot faster than the Firefly one, faster than a lot of these landers. And one of the big reasons is Intuitive Machines has a powerful maneuvering engine on board, a Methalox engine, the same type of fuel that's used for Starship. Methalox delivering a substantial amount of thrust for the size of the engine and the amount of fuel consumed. So yeah, definitely a useful engine on a very innovative spacecraft. So in any event, as I said, it got here relatively quickly. I apologize. I had a call coming in. Just dismiss that real quick. Also, for those of you who are interested in the Ariane 6 launch that took place, Arianespace sending a military satellite up to orbit right now, a very important launch for European defense and also for Arianespace, the second launch of their Ariane 6 rocket. Thus far, everything seems to be going well with that launch. Again, it being a military mission, there's only so much information that we're getting, but the liftoff was smooth. The booster made it just fine. The stage separation took place, and the second stage is now burning with what's called a Vinci engine on the second stage, delivering the satellite. So we'll see. We'll keep you up to date as to whether or not that mission goes successfully. In the meantime, though, we're about 50 minutes away from landing on the moon. Intuitive Machines. Producer, are we good yet? Yeah.
In less than a week. I mean, what an exciting time.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, we've had the launch of IM-2 on last Wednesday, and then very early Sunday morning, we had the successful landing of Blue Ghost Mission 1 from Firefly. It's really, I'm over the moon at this point.
You know, talking now about this specific mission for IM-2, can you tell us why some of the specific
Anton, thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. And don't forget to like and subscribe, guys.
Mission for Intuitive Machines?
So Intuitive Machines' first mission, NASA primarily selected scientific instruments. As a matter of fact, we left it up to Intuitive Machines to pick out which NASA scientific instruments that we had available for the moon, they would fly on IM-1. But this mission is really different. It's not just Intuitive Machines' second flight of their Nova C model lunar lander. But this mission is almost focused exclusively on technology development payloads instead of scientific instruments. So the payloads that are on Intuitive Machines 2 will really test out and demonstrate new technology.
We do have some audio problems, apparently, from Intuitive Machines.
By people that develop exploration systems and by people that do operations in space. So it's got a really different character than IM-1.
You know, that's really fascinating. I can't wait to discover what we learn once we're on the moon. Now, Joel, can you tell us why is it important that we have these different CLPS contracts with the different commercial providers?
Well, you know, for a number of reasons. One is that we, of course, when we buy a service, we want to be able to have competition so that we can get the best service at the best price the fastest we can. But even more than that, by having a number of different companies develop these CLPS service landers, we're able to see the different strengths and the different entrepreneurial ways that they develop new techniques just for their lander, and it gives overall a much better suite of products for the United States to have. Also, one of our goals on CLPS, in addition to carrying science and technology on the moon, is to generate a group of companies in the U.S. that are very good at landing things on the moon so the U.S. government can buy that service, or other foreign companies or governments could also buy that service from the U.S.
You know, Joel, thank you so much for joining us here today. Now we'll send it back to our hostess, to Leah and Josh.
Thanks, Antonia. We're following along with Athena's descent toward the lunar surface. I'll glance over at the viz, and it looks like she's continuing to decrease her altitude until powered descent initiation. She's right about 58 kilometers, but we expect PDI in approximately 36 minutes. That's powered descent initiation. That is a main engine firing that takes about 12 minutes. It's designed to slow Athena's speed in preparation for final descent moments before touchdown. The time of ignition for PDI is 11:15 a.m. Central Time, and that's 11 a.m., 15 a.m. p.m., Eastern. The entire landing sequence is autonomous, meaning the lander is in control of every milestone required for a lunar landing.
Okay, so we have another conflict because of copyrighted music. So once again, to review what this mission is all about, this is the United States' first landing attempt at the lunar South Pole. There have been a number of these CLPS or CLPS missions that have taken place prior to this, but none of them have tried to set down in this region, and that's going to be an extreme challenge. The lunar South Pole is a very rugged area. It is heavily cratered. There's lots of lunar mountains, lots of steep grades, lots of areas that are difficult to set down in. And also, I've been critical of Intuitive Machines lander because it seems to be a bit top heavy. I don't like tall, thin landers for setting down on the moon. I like short and squat. And that's what Firefly had, and they were totally successful. By the way, India's Chandrayaan-2 lander was also configured that way and was successful. And by the way, was the first human vehicle of any kind to land at the lunar South Pole, and they pulled that off successfully. So, you know, that being the case, we'll see how they can pull it off this time. Again, I'm confident that they'll be able to do it. I just think that they're working a little bit against themselves based on the design. That sort of tall, spindly configuration may not be the best for the moon. Astrobotic doesn't do it that way. Firefly doesn't do it that way. I'm not sure if the Japanese do it that way. We'll see. But in any event, by the way, let's see if we can bring you another update from Arianespace. Nothing at all. Near as we can tell, the mission's going fine, but we don't have any other information from Arianespace on that particular launch. We're going to go ahead and bring him back, producer.
Craft using Nokia's 4G LTE lunar surface communications system.
We have people that are driven to build and fly and operate space equipment, and that's what we're here for. It's who we are.
Well put from Dr. Crane there, Leah. That is who we are, but let's take a closer look at what we've built.
This mission's Nova C-class lunar lander is named Athena. She's carrying 11 payloads, including NASA and commercial instruments to the moon, and including her solar panels, she's just over 15 feet tall. With the landing gear, she's just shy of 15 feet wide, and that's about the length of a standard car parking spot. The lander weighs nearly 1,500 pounds, with the majority of that weight at the base during landing, and it's capable of delivering about 220 pounds of payload to the lunar surface. And we've got a replica of Athena right here. So Josh, can you walk us through a few of the commercial payloads that are on board for this mission?
Sure. Pretty convenient placement, right? We consider all of these commercial payloads to be pioneers on these early missions. Underneath the garage here, we have Lunar Outpost Map Rover, right, which is also connected to Nokia's 4G LTE system. That's their lunar surface communications system. On the other side, we have another interesting bit. This one is Lone Star's data center, and the lander itself is protected by two innovative technologies from Columbia Sportswear, helping to protect this mission, making sure Athena makes it to her intended destination, Leah.
Athena and her payloads are expected to land on the Mons Mouton region of the moon. This is farther south than any lunar landing attempt ever.
And Leah, that is significant. Just like Earth, there are places on the moon that are like landing in an open field. The South Pole is a different story. This mission's landing site is more similar to landing on a small plateau in the Rocky Mountains, but that's where we think that there's going to be water in future exploration.
Well, to learn a little bit more, let's head to Antonio Jaramillo to learn about this landing site.
Hey, thanks, Leah. Joining me now is Ben Bussey, Intuitive Machines Chief Scientist. Ben, you know, both IM-1 and IM-2 chose the moon's south pole for its landing locations. Why specifically the South Pole?
So the lunar poles are interesting for both scientific and exploration regions. We know because of the moon's tilt that the craters near the pole are permanently shadowed. They never see the sun. So they're extremely cold, and we believe that water and other volatiles could build up inside those craters and in the polar region, and that represents a resource for future robotic and human exploration. And also the poles are sort of lunar incognita in that they've been relatively underexplored. If you think back to the Apollo era of exploration, that was all sort of equatorial, and so there's still a lot to learn about them.
Absolutely, and so can you tell us then a little bit then what's different then from both the landing locations of IM-1 and IM-2, even though they're in a similar area?
I would say there are more similarities than differences between the two landing sites. The poles are a challenging location in that when you look at the moon, you have sort of the dark regions that you see, which in Latin are the seas and the lakes. They're relatively flat terrain. But we want to explore the poles. The poles are what they call highland terrain, more rugged, low sun angle, which makes them challenging. And so IM-1 landed about 80 degrees south. It's also the location that the NASA with Artemis wants to send crew. So we're gradually working our way towards the poles. We're about twice as close to the pole with IM-2, about 85 degrees south, about 160 kilometers, 100 miles away from the South Pole.
And now, you know, you briefly touched on it, but can you discuss some more the challenges of landing in the South Pole?
Yes, so I think when the team picks a landing site, there are really three parts to that. The first part, the most important part, is it has to be a safe landing site. The moon doesn't have an atmosphere. It has hazards. You can't avoid craters, and so you have to have the capability to avoid them during the final part. You also have to avoid the boulders. So the first step is going to be a safe landing site. The second part is, are you going somewhere where the instruments and the payloads that you're flying, can they achieve the science or the technology goals that they want to do? And that's one of the reasons we've picked the site that we have. And the third, one of the reasons also the poles are challenging, is unlike the near side of the moon where you'd see the Earth all the time and the sun would come up for 14 days and set.
Thank you, Plastic. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
And you play a sort of a game of orbital mechanics in that that you need the sun and the earth both to be up at the same time. And that changes every month. So the team has to take that into account as well.
A lot of things to take into account. You know, Ben, this is going to be Intuitive Machines' second lunar landing. How are you and the team feeling?
Oh, I think the best way to phrase it is nervous, excited. I mean, obviously the landing is exciting and scary, but we're very excited about what we hope the payloads will achieve. One of the payloads, the hopper, is like a mini lander that can fly several kilometers. And one of the reasons the Mons Mouton region, it is one of the Artemis regions, one of the potential regions for crew. We're landing close to a small, permanently shadowed 200-meter crater. We've put instruments on the hopper from Puli Space in Hungary. It's a neutron spectrometer. It'll measure hydrogen. So it'll be the first ever time we've taken a direct hydrogen measurement inside a permanently shadowed crater.
You know, very exciting times ahead. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Now we'll send it back to Leah and Josh.
Thank you, Tony and Ben. As a reminder, Intuitive Machines lunar lander is taking NASA science and technology demonstrations to the moon under the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative. We call it CLPS. Under CLPS, NASA asks commercial companies like Intuitive Machines to provide lunar delivery services that advance capabilities for science, exploration, or commercial development of the moon. This flight will deliver 3 NASA instruments for CLPS, including a drill suite called Prime 1 and a laser retroreflector array, or
Thanks so much,
LRA.
Grand Rapids.
These NASA
And thanks,
payloads will focus
Joseph.
on
Thank you.
drilling capabilities, investigating resources below the lunar surface, and analyzing surface and subsurface volatiles.
Thank you, Saturn, man. Wow, so much generosity. Thank you.
Surface. Let's take a closer look at these NASA instruments. First is Prime 1, or the Polar Resources Ice Mining Experiment 1. Prime 1 is a collection of 2 instruments that complement each other's work. The Trident drill, which stands for the regolith and ice drill for exploring new terrain, and M-SOLO, which stands for mass spectrometer for observing lunar operations. The Trident drill will extract lunar soil, also known as regolith, up to
Could we try to
1
reboot
meter
this,
or
producer?
approximately 3 feet below the
Reboot their
surface.
stream just to see.
Solo, the mass spectrometer, is designed to analyze the composition of that sample for water and other components. In addition, M-SOLO will measure the composition of gases released near the drill activity. This technology instrument will help demonstrate drilling capabilities that will help scientists understand
I just keep seeing the buffering. Are you
on-site or in situ resources that already exist.
It's buffering a lot. We're going to see what we can do
NASA's
about
next
this
payload
buffering,
is
guys,
the
to
Laser
see if it might be from our
Retroreflector
side.
Array,
We're going to
or
go ahead and
LRA. It's a
reboot
collection
the
of 8 retroreflectors
intuitive
similar to
stream
the
real quick
reflectors on your bike
to see,
that
just in
emit
case this
precision-
problem happens to be coming from our side. So bear with us here while we go ahead and try to bring this back and see if it changes anything. Producer, let me know when we're back. Right. Yeah, right now I'm checking up, guys, on the Arianespace mission again. For those of you still interested in that, still nothing from Arianespace. The last update we got from them was 20 minutes ago, saying that the second stage burn was happening. Again, this is a high altitude satellite. We're talking geosynchronous for a lot of these military satellites, so it takes a while to get them deployed properly. So we're just going to go ahead and right now, near as we can tell, that mission seems to have gone just fine. We're approximately 34 minutes away from touchdown, and they're probably going to jump into descending into that final descent in about 20 minutes or so. And things are going to get really tense. Fortunately, the thing that caused Intuitive Machines' problem the last time, the LiDAR, that is functioning properly this time, as far as we know. Wasn't functioning properly before. How are we looking right now, producer? Any better? Yeah, it looks like it's... Yeah, good. Let's go ahead and put Intuitive Machines audio back. Right, we don't want to do that.
Internal research funds and development, and then the government puts money in. So we're true
All
partners.
right, we got them back. Let's see if that
capabilities.
helps.
Now, specifically on IM-2, why did NASA decide to
Yes,
invest
Anton, it
on
was
Intuitive
IM-1
Machines,
that tipped over the
Micronova
last
Hopper,
time.
or Grace, and then also the Nokia Lunar Surface Communication System?
So I'm glad you asked. So we have something called the Lunar Surface Innovation Initiative, and it was started in about 2019, shortly after Artemis. The whole idea there was, in order to do anything on the moon, you're going to have a set of capabilities or technologies that everyone is going to need. Just your basic infrastructure, if you will. So things like power and surviving, the dust and the environment you're in. But two of the key areas that come up over and over again, of course, are autonomy and robotics and mobility, being able to get around. We all know that there are places on the moon that are more treacherous than others. It's a pretty rough environment. So we have permanently shadowed regions, which you've heard about earlier today that we want to get into. The hopper can do that, right, and get that data and show us what's in there. There's where we think we might have some water or ice. For the communications, that's a no-brainer, right? Every time I talk to, whether it's a second grade class or my grandmother, then they would, when do we have our cell phones? When am I going to have my phone on the moon? You have to be able to communicate. Whether you're in your rover and traversing, whether you're in your suit or in your habitat, you have to have a way to be able to communicate. So it's very important that we get this communications established.
And aside from making sure we have communications on the moon, I guess, how does NASA determine what other technologies are important to demonstrate on the lunar surface?
Right, so this has been a lot of fun because what we really do is look at the larger, I'm going to say, ecosystem of both what NASA wants to do from an architecture perspective, but also from establishing a commercial ecosystem on the moon. So there are certain capabilities that you're going to need, those infrastructure items, if you will. So when you think about living and working somewhere like the moon, I don't know about y'all, but if I go to Walmart, if I go to Florida, I'll have to stop at Walmart and buy my flip-flops, right? You have to prepare for a lot of different things that could happen. So you need that basic infrastructure so you can be more independent from Earth and live and work. So things like power. I mentioned the dust. We learned in Apollo that the dust is very abrasive and very hard on your systems. So we have active, passive, and operational ways to control that. You notice I say dust mitigation, not solutions, because you have to mitigate it. Being able to rove around, being able to have communications, in situ resource utilization, which Prime will be looking at, on how we can use the natural resources where we are instead of being totally Earth dependent. So doing those studies, understanding kind of infrastructure that everyone is going to need is how we pick and prioritize.
So definitely a lot of important technologies. Yes. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us and speaking with us today. Now we'll send it back to Leah and Josh.
Thanks, Tony and Nikki. Here's a deeper look into how the Nokia tipping point will work and the benefits for future missions.
On Earth, a cellular network has many components: base stations, radio units, and a core network that manages the connection between users and the network.
Okay. Here we go again. another copyrighted music situation. So once again, it looks like we're about 29 minutes or so away from landing. They're going to begin that descent here in about, I would say, in about 10 minutes or so. So then we'll be counting down the distance to the lunar surface and the speed as the vehicle obviously applies braking thrust. It's still traveling very, very fast right now, and clearly it has to go a lot slower in order to safely set down. So bear with me, guys. We got a producer. Can we reduce that volume just a tad? All right. So in any event, bear with me for just a moment here, just checking some of the comments to see whether or not we have anything else. And once again, since we rebooted, I think that we've gotten that the streams looked a lot better than it was before. But in any event, there was a comment. Oh yeah, now I remember. There was a comment made about Starship. Since I had expressed concern about a tall and maybe top heavy kind of configuration being bad for the moon, how it's going to be a lot worse for Starship. I tend to agree. I think Starship is going to be a very problematic vehicle to try to land in the lunar South Pole. I think there will be areas where we will be able to land it, definitely. It can't be all hills, mountains, and craters, but nevertheless, it's going to really limit the number of landing spots compared to some of the other alternatives that were proposed years ago. I bring this up all the time. It's kind of pointless to bring it up, but the Dynetics Alpaca was much more long, low slung, and designed to land on serious grades on really steep hills and still land safely. And that's something that none of the landers that were actually chosen are designed to do. Let's go ahead and bring Intuitive Machines back.
And traverse the moon. And the company's lunar surface communications system that's from Nokia will demonstrate proximity communications between Athena, Lunar Outpost rover, and the Hopper.
The Lunar Outpost MAP rover aboard the IM-2 mission will also carry a technology from the MIT Media Lab Space Exploration Initiative called Astro-Ant, which was tested through STMD's Flight Opportunities program. To change the pace of space, the Science Technology Mission Directorate's Flight Opportunities program works with industry flight providers to rapidly demonstrate promising technologies in reduced gravity and other relevant environments.
And Leah, we're just about 12 minutes from Athena starting her final approach to the lunar surface, and things are moving forward as going into an intense 11-minute main engine firing towards the lunar surface. And to this point, Athena has traveled over 700,000 kilometers up on the Viz over 8 days for this final, very risky maneuver.
Yeah, risky is right. It's no secret that landing on the moon is challenging. Countries around the world have attempted this incredible feat, with some being successful and some not. Of course, the United States has landed on the moon many times, most notably during the Apollo program. But today we're looking for the third landing by a U.S. commercial company enabled under NASA's CLPS initiative. Ahead of these important milestones, let's discuss the challenges of landing on the moon through CLPS. Take a look.
Landing on the moon is hard. We're going back. Under this Artemis program, we're going to be sending humans to the moon for the first time since Apollo. So ahead of...
All right. We got music again. That seems Intuitive Machines loves playing their copyrighted music. But one of the advantages that we have in terms of landing on the moon today, didn't have quite as much in the past, is the fact that it can be handled in an automated fashion with a lot more equipment that wasn't available. LiDAR, of course, being a laser rangefinder, essentially, is what that is. That's something that didn't exist during the time of the Apollo missions. Indeed, the Apollo lander others like Neil Armstrong and such, the way that they would bring those things down is you essentially look out the window and try to find a clear spot in the designated landing area. So again, you had really good, really experienced pilots who had done lots of simulated landings with the Apollo landers, and they just look out the windows and try to find a spot that didn't have a lot of rocks and set the lander down there. And it didn't always work out. There was one particular Apollo mission that landed on a hill, on a grade. And on that grade, if it had been another 2 degrees steeper than it was, literally 2 degrees, they would not have been able to lift off. They would not have been able to get back home, and those astronauts would have died. And then most probably the rest of the Apollo missions would have been canceled after that event. So having this LiDAR and other rangefinder systems available to NASA or to anybody trying to land on the moon makes an enormous difference in terms of being able to land safely. But once again, not 100%. And that was the thing that went wrong, as I mentioned before, with IM-1, the fact that their LiDAR malfunctioned, that it didn't work, and they had to use a backup experimental LiDAR that NASA provided in order to make the landing, one that wasn't really designed for the landing. The fact that they managed to set down safely was a miracle. Would you still have them right now, producer? Can we bring them back? Okay. Apparently we still have, we just listened in, we still have some music, unfortunately. So we'll go ahead and continue with all of that. So yeah, I mean, Starship, I think, will experience a lot of those problems also. I think Starship will have a lot of these problems eliminated once we have a landing pad for it. I think that coming up with an automated system designed to build landing pads will make a huge difference for Starship. Then at that point, all of the enormous cargo that Starship is capable of transporting, its advantages will definitely come into play at that point. But right now, Starship is not very well set up to land in rugged terrain. So I think it will be a challenge. I'm sure they'll be able to pull it off. It'll just be a challenge. Now we can go ahead and bring Intuitive Machines back. We're just a few minutes away from the descent.
Attracted by Intuitive Machines across the globe and into Nova Control. The mission director and landing system experts are looking at a screen called the Deorbit Descent and Landing, or DDL screen. It's used primarily while Athena orbits the moon through to landing. That same data flow is being interpreted through a video game engine to create what we call the viz that you see on your screen right now. Well, we have made some improvements to increase the fidelity and reliability of the viz. We expect to keep it up for you during the landing, although the last few seconds may be an estimation of what's happening, as Athena may lose communications contact, particularly when she pitches over right before vertical descent.
Right now, looking at the viz, it shows Athena approximately 15 kilometers above the lunar surface, so we're getting close. Now, when the lander makes it down to about 10 kilometers, we expect Athena to continuously fire her main engine, throttling down until softly landing on the lunar surface.
And Leah, that final burn is called Powered Descent Initiation, or PDI. Athena must slow down by about 1,800 meters per second, which doesn't mean too much until we typed it into Google. That's about 4,000 miles per hour. That's because she's approaching her landing site coming down from orbit, so she has a lot of lateral speed. You can think of PDI like hitting the brakes on your car in order to make a safe turn. But in Athena's case, that turn is moving into a vertical upright position to start descending down to the lunar surface. PDI should be starting here just in about 6 minutes, I believe. Leah?
The teams here in Nova Control have been working diligently over the past 7-8 days to take us this far. Now, again, only 15 kilometers above the lunar surface. We're following the countdown to Athena's landing attempt, but for now, we're heading back over to Tony Hadamia, who is standing by with NASA's acting administrator, Janet Petro. Tony?
Thanks, Leah. It's always an honor to be joined by NASA leadership, and joining us now is Acting Administrator Janet Petro. Janet, we're getting, 20 minutes until landing. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling super excited. I got a little nervous, fingers crossed, toes crossed, but looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I have everything crossed too. Can you tell us a little bit more about the challenges of landing on the moon, especially for these uncrewed robotic spacecraft?
Yeah, so even, you mentioned these are uncrewed, but even back in the Apollo days, the 7 times we landed on the moon, it was very, very challenging, required a whole bunch of simulations and demonstrations to get that right. And so for the uncrewed, so each lander is unique, so each is developed differently, and the harshness of the environment with no atmosphere, the dust that's going to spring up when it lands, all these conditions make it really, really hard to do it right and get it right. And so one thing I found from the Firefly from last week, all these companies know how hard it is. Their own technology, they've got to have precise propulsion and navigation systems to get them right down on the surface, and it's all automated. We're 238,000 miles away from Earth, so there's no real-time control, so that the systems have got to work perfectly together. So these companies, that they support each other, and I was started to say we were at Firefly, and several of the other companies sent them in coffee and donuts because they know how stressful it is for the team as they're coming in for a landing to make it, and hopefully it'll go right. But it is really, really hard to make sure that all the systems are working seamlessly and perfectly, and that as they get closer and closer to the lunar surface, that the rugged terrain that they're about to land on, it all works out. And the South Pole is increasingly challenging with the very, very deep craters that are there. The low level of light and the angle of the sun make that even more challenging. So it's harsh. It's harsh.
It absolutely is, and it's just even more impressive when the teams then are able to land, well. Janet, can you tell us how these commercial then lunar flights that are part of the agency's CLIPS initiative, how are they helping us then in our own Artemis missions when we send humans back to the moon?
Yeah, so I consider them part of the way bigger Artemis missions as we're going back to the moon and then on to Mars, that we talk about all the time. And so CLIPS, the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, I just think it's a brilliant partnership between NASA and innovative companies to come up with their own concepts and ideas and help put forth science and instruments earlier than we're going to be able to get humans on the moon. And we'll be able to learn a lot from these instruments and payloads that we're deploying. Things like, the water ice. Maybe we can find some water ice. Different roving mobility techniques. Of course, looking at all the lunar resources and the drilling, drill baby drill that we're going to do on this mission. So all of that we're going to be able to apply to Artemis when we get humans back on the surface of the moon, and then as we go out to Mars. And again, I think CLIPS is a brilliant partnership. And I mentioned, I believe this administration talks about America first, and I think the way we can do it is by bringing along industry and really dominating the space, whether it's low Earth orbit, whether it's cislunar, or whether it's on the surface of the moon. I think we will continue to push boundaries and make sure that we are first and retain leadership in space.
A lot of exciting science ahead. Janet, thank you so much for joining us today. Now we'll send it back to Leah and Josh.
Thanks, Antonia. It's time to buckle up, space fans, or lean forward in your chair. We just heard the call out for 90 seconds for time of ignition for PDI. Let's go ahead and open up those operational channels so that folks at home can listen as we go in towards PDI, Leah. That's a braking burn coming out of orbit, trying to slow down about 4,000 miles per hour.
Yeah, PDI stands for Power Descent Initiation. So this is really that final commitment that we are coming in
Here we go,
for
guys.
landing. And everything is really going to happen in
60
rapid
seconds.
succession after this 11-minute burn, now just 60 seconds away. The rest of the sequence is only about 2 minutes to touchdown. Can you break that down for us, Josh?
That's right. It's going to be rather quick after we get through this PDI maneuver. You're going to
All right, folks, one of the, there's
call
a
out for
question asked
45
about
seconds.
bandwidth
After
real
PDI, we'll
quick.
have pitch over,
The
HDA.
communication is through the NASA Deep Space Network, and that infrastructure has not been upgraded for a long time. No one's willing to spend the money on it. SpaceX does what they do because of Starlink orbiting the Earth. But if this were a SpaceX mission landing on the moon, they would have the same problem.
We might be
AFM is in exec mode.
I was just about to say we're listed for exec mode here.
15.
15 seconds.
RCS settling burn.
Settling burn. That's our attitude control system.
Ignition commanded.
Ignition and main stage.
All right, let's go ahead and start our stopwatches here.
Cameras are running.
We'll be listening for that.
All right, so the
max
braking
level.
burn has started, guys.
Chamber pressures look nominal.
Decelerating and starting into that approach.
They're not going in at 100% here, Leah. They're
Good
going in about 90% in case they need a little bit more oomph on this braking burn.
Again, this isn't about
Good control.
about an 11-minute burn, but the
Thank
engine
you,
does
Anton.
not cut
Thank
off
you.
at the end of
Happy
this burn. It just
birthday,
continues to
Annie.
throttle down
Happy
until
birthday.
we land softly on the lunar surface.
And we're listening in to hear some good confirmations of data. If you hear good confirmation of data, that means that data is
No,
making
Sue,
its way
it
to the
has not
viz,
crashed.
what you're watching right now on your screen. We do expect to lose some of those communications, especially during that pitch over maneuver at the end of PDI. That's when the lander will be changing its attitude, and maybe those antennas aren't pointed directly back to Earth. It's something we expect, something we plan for. But one thing that's unique to the lunar south pole is what's called multipath, and that's when you have radio waves reaching their intended destination back at Earth after they're taking a different route, maybe bouncing off a crater or a ridge. So we do expect less than optimal radio signals on the surface, but that's something we have to plan for, and it's something that's reflected inside the viz here. So if the viz does lose communications, it's going to continue moving in its last estimated vector. So folks at home, you might be seeing the lander touch down on the surface, but the ultimate call of confirmation and what is happening is going to come from that mission director seat. You see it in the small box on the bottom right hand of your screen. That's Dr. Tim Crane in the mission director seat today.
Coming up on 1 minute and 45 seconds since the start of the burn, again, an 11-minute burn using the main engine aboard Athena. And if you're watching the viz and it looks like Athena is traveling parallel essentially to the lunar surface, that's because it is. This is a braking
2 minutes
burn.
in.
Confirmation 2 minutes in, and a better picture on the viz that shows just
Chamber pressure still nominal.
continuing to get good calls. But the next step will be pitch over. So during that pitch over time frame, Athena will begin to upright itself and prepare to descend down to the lunar surface and also activate HDA, or hazard detection and avoidance. Can you break that down for us too?
Yeah, we touched on this at the top of the show, Leah. We are going in at about 450 meters for PDI versus our originally planned 400 meters, and that's because we had some uncertainty and variability within the recent landing measurements, going in about 50 meters higher, allowing those flight controllers to manually confirm and screen alternative measurements. But we do expect that our estimated landing time will stay closer towards that estimated 11:30 Central Time. That's 12:30 Eastern. And right now we're standing by, just about to hit 3 minutes into this burn. We're listening.
3 minutes in.
There it is. How about that? And we're listening in to hear for things about how many kilometers uprange we may be. We know this braking burn will continue to happen until about 2 kilometers from our intended landing site. Now that intended landing site is where Athena...
Still processing good depause.
Hey, that's a good call. All right, folks at home, that depause is that delta position, meaning the lander is taking pictures in flight, and she's comparing those two pictures together to determine how much have I moved and figure out how fast did I get there in order to affirm that Athena's going in the right direction, making the right moves going forward. Another good thing about depause, we're getting good comm. So on your screen at home and you're looking at the viz, you're looking at, what is this, about 16 meters. That may be off about 16 meters. We'll stand by for a call out to confirm maybe altitude as well as distance to the landing site. But if they're getting good DPOS, they have good comm, again, we do expect, plan, and train for a loss of comm right around the pitch over time frame, and maybe also as well as we descend towards the lunar surface, making sure that our radios and antennas are in the right config.
490 seconds left in the burn.
490 seconds left in the burn. That's code for, we've been burning for about 4 minutes, Leah. We'll stand by to try to get some more data and call outs here, maybe some kilometers up range, as well as the mixture ratio, trying to figure out the vehicle's performance, that mixture of liquid methane and liquid oxygen going into the engine. Let's take a second and listen in to flight controllers.
GNC 174 acknowledged.
Yeah. For those of you who are expecting to see, you know, this with live cameras and all that, again, these folks, like anybody else going to the moon, are utilizing the NASA Deep Space Network. That is an old communication system that nobody spent money to upgrade this thing substantially for a long time. NASA infrastructure is very, very important. And they haven't spent a lot of money to upgrade it. So as a result, bandwidth has to be prioritized for the control and data coming over from the lander. That's what we get first. And so therefore, video, 4K video, that sort of thing, you're not going to see that live. However, they are filming it, and we will see it eventually, and I will be broadcasting that on this channel when they upload it.
To manually intervene. We talked about allowing a little bit of extra time with that additional 50 meters for
400
PDI.
seconds left in braking.
400 seconds left in braking. We're almost up on 6 minutes inside of this burn. But that extra 50 meters is allowing flight controllers to manually confirm and screen alternative measurements, as we did have a little bit of uncertainty and variability with recent landing measurements. By my count, we're just crossing about 6 minutes, Leah.
That means we're
GNC 175 acknowledged.
If they had their own, if they took some satellites with them, yeah, they would have to build a network.
We are over halfway into this 11-minute burn using the main engine on.
But yeah, they could.
AFM is in braking 2.
Braking 2, progressing through that PDI count, Leah.
350 seconds left in braking.
350 seconds left in braking, just crossing over the 6.5-minute mark since PDI, powered descent initiation. This is one continuous burn from PDI all the way down to the surface.
VFM mode is DPOS only.
All right, we're still processing delta position. Those are camera measurements the lander is looking at and making decisions. One of those decisions will be using hazard detection.
Okay, we're seeing that altitude dropping off rapidly now.
Autonomously make those decisions of a safe site, whether that's safe from a boulders or steep slopes. We'll hear those call outs after we pitch over. You'll hear HDA, and that's what we're listening for to figure out where those hazards are and choose a new landing site.
The speed has dropped by nearly 50%.
Now over 7 minutes into the burn, this braking burn.
300 seconds left in braking.
Specifically 300 seconds left. This braking burn.
Engine is still healthy.
And great confirmation about the engine itself. That engine is bringing
GNC 176 acknowledged.
Engine is bringing us from about 4,000 miles per hour to eventually a soft about 1 meter per second, or about 3 feet per second landing.
And I'm catching a little jitters watching the viz here, so I think folks at home will be seeing the same thing. Remember, this is data being streamed down from a lander that's braking about 4,000 miles per hour, trying to feed that data back 250,000 miles away.
TAL is EBNO at 5 dB.
Just to enjoy a little view.
8 minutes elapsed. Camera's now in braking 2 mode.
We are still inside of PDI, braking 2 mode.
250 seconds left in braking.
Right now, IM-2 is hovering, or rather flying, a little bit higher than the altitude of a commercial jet.
Don't expect the engine to reach full 100% thrust. It's really a throttled approach. This engine is designed to continuously burn in throttle all the way from power descent initiation, which began 8 minutes and 30 seconds ago.
About 40,000 feet.
This approach is very similar to what we saw for the Apollo descent modules as well.
And it makes a lot of sense. If you go in at 100% and you need a little more, there's nothing left to give. right? We want to come in.
Man, that altitude is dropping fast
and then
now.
have a little
You
bit
can
of
see
room
that
to play
at the
if we
top
do need to
right
increase
of their
the
display.
speed of which we're slowing down.
dropping
You'll
real
hear folks maybe
fast.
call out the rate of acceleration, but in this case, for us, that's
9 minutes
deceleration.
elapsed.
Crossing over 9
200
minutes.
seconds left in braking.
Yes, just a couple of minutes left in the braking burn, so another look forward to that rapid succession of events that'll come immediately after braking is complete. We will see pitch over begin. We'll be using those 4 RCS, or reaction control system thrusters, at the top of the spacecraft to reorient Athena before its a final approach, vertical descent, and terminal descent.
And all of those after PDI, Leah, that you just called out, we're expecting those to happen rapidly.
All right, guys, the speed has dropped down a lot at this point, about 60% from where we were at the beginning of the burn, and we're about 10 kilometers, about 33,000 feet up.
Systems, again, expected as we get in towards.
And you're right, Sue, no go-arounds.
Some jitters on the
They are committed now. Either it works or they crash.
Good data on Quasonics.
The first one we heard a loss of
GNC
signal.
177 acknowledged.
The second was a confirmation that the second radio, we still have signal. So it's good signal, good data, good viz, and we're watching the show here along with the folks at home.
10 minutes into the burn, so expecting just about a minute more until the end of this braking maneuver.
9 kilometers. About 4 minutes from landing, guys.
We expect and plan for pitch over just about 2 kilometers away from the intended landing site. That gives Athena a little bit of time to pitch over and start looking forward using her navigation sensors to detect different hazards, as well as her altitude, to lower down to the lunar surface at approximately
8 kilometers
meters per second.
altitude.
All goes towards plan. There's
About
LOS as we
27,000
approach
feet
our
or
pitch
so.
over.
Seven kilometers. Boy, this altitude is dropping
11
quick.
minutes into the burn. Local time is
AOS on
11:26.
Quasonics.
11 minutes in.
11 minutes in, we heard
6
another call out that
kilometers.
we're up on Quasonics. That's a radio system.
Wait a minute, hold on.
It's 11:26 local. I'm looking at a pitch over time at 11:27 in about 52 seconds. So we are coming up over to the pitch over, where we expect to have some loss of comms. Earlier, we talked about multipath that is very unique to the lunar South Pole, where our radio signals are using multiple ways to get to the same destination, whether that's from bouncing off the harsh terrain or some different polarity issues down there on the South Pole. We expect to have a weaker than normal signal, but we still want to make sure we get that confirmation, Leah. As part of that confirmation, we're
You
gonna
see
sync
that
the
altitude's
vehicle,
changing a
figure
lot,
out the
going up and
status there,
down,
then
up and
start
down.
working on
Remember,
pictures after
not all of
everything's
this
safe.
is precise, number one, but number two,
Maybe-
this is
maybe
rugged
around, 2
terrain,
hours
lots
after
of
landing, we
mountains,
can,
lots of craters.
cherish that photo.
And if this is based
LOS
on the
on
LiDAR
Quasonics.
data, that
Loss of
altitude's going to
signal
change a
on one of
lot.
the radio systems. We approach 12 minutes into PDI.
5 kilometers.
Again, the engine will continue to fire, albeit it will continue throttling down as we approach the lunar surface. And a reminder, the Viz is a simulation based on flight data.
About
but
2
if we
minutes away,
do
guys.
lose,
Here we go.
contact with the lander, which can be expected based on the conditions at the lunar South Pole, we will continue to see projected data on this visualization.
And we're approaching G, as in ground, to 2 minutes. We expect to drop this clock here in 2 minutes and take all of our commands from inside of Nova Control.
We don't
The
know
bottom
for
right
certain
hand of your
exactly.
screen
This
is
is
Dr.
all
Tim
based
Crane,
on
our
what is
co-founder
expected.
and Chief Growth
So,
Officer, also sitting in as Mission Director for the landing.
again, we
this
can't be
IM-2
certain that
mission.
any of this data is 100% right.
Standing by for the latest
We will
information.
know
Let's wait.
when it lands. Like right now, you saw the altitude go back up.
Quasonics AOS.
HRN, HCA, HCA2.
Thales AOS.
Right. And there's chances are there's a comms
60
outage
seconds
here.
left in
Again,
braking.
this is what they expected as they
60
pitch
seconds
over
left in braking.
and prepare for that final descent. Can't say for
approach.
certain what's going on
Landing
here.
site
Let's
selected.
hope that everything is
Engine at idle.
okay. Okay,
11
we just
meters
picked up
cross-range
signal
cover.
again, it appears.
Quasonics.
We got
LOS.
signal.
There's that loss of signal over pitch over. Stand by, see if we regain that signal. Remember,
Right now,
folks,
the
viz that
speed,
you're
it's
watching at
going
home is an
about the speed
estimation of data. It's doing its
a
best.
car
That's
going
a lot
through
of data
a
coming from
residential
really
neighborhood
far
right
away.
now.
All commands
So
and
it
all
is going
confirmations
quite slow.
come from our mission director at the bottom right hand of your screen.
But I don't think that altitude's correct, guys. I wouldn't pay much attention to that. I think that the lander's a lot lower than what we're thinking. I think we're very close to landing right now. Godspeed, Intuitive Machines, Nova C, let's go.
Again, we are standing by, monitoring the Viz just as you are at home, along with Nova Control.
We are approaching approximately the time that we estimated Athena would touch down on the surface. We did hear a call out for a Quasonics LOS. That is our radio system, something we expect to happen at pitch over. That's prior to a vertical descent and terminal descent. That latest
How
data
are we doing on signal?
is what you're seeing on the Viz. Why don't we go?
We currently are getting our uplink through HEMI-2, and we have a healthy AGC value, so our uplink is coming in strong for Talas. And then for our downlink, we have a strong EBNO at 17 on Green Hilly, and we are currently not seeing our Quasonics. So we are in Quasonics LOS.
All right, that's a
See our
Quasonics.
signal strong on the spectrum for Talos. I'm not seeing our Quasonics on our spectrum as of yet.
FM, what mode are we in?
Approach 17 is the last we've seen.
All right, so that's up on one radio, and they do have a loss of signal in the second.
Fido, I'm looking at the SenseXL. Do you see the SenseXL reading?
Let me look.
That's the mission director detecting see if
I
the
am
lander.
seeing SenseXL 1G.
I'm not liking the sound of this, guys.
So that was the
I
mission
hope I'm
director,
wrong,
Dr.
but
Tim
I'm not
Crane,
liking
trying
the
to figure out
sound of
what is
this.
the vehicle sensing. It has two inertial measurement units on board. You can think of those as your inner ear. So when he's asking what is the sensed acceleration, that's what he's asking for, is what is that inertial measurement unit, that inner ear, detecting as far as acceleration.
Again, as we've mentioned, the Viz here is just an interpretation of landing.
We are not getting the sort of data and
Yeah,
communications
let's
that
go ahead
one
and
would
stay on
expect
Nova
to
Control.
get under
Looks like
these
the Viz is
circumstances.
hovering. We can't.
Prop, what are you seeing on the engine?
The engine is still in idle at min thrust. We are still seeing chamber pressure.
So we're getting good data. We heard that we have one radio up, one radio loss of signal. We just heard that we
I'm
have.
seeing guidance to solution for time
Okay,
to
that's
go
weird. They
as
still
is
are getting
increasing,
data from the engine.
indicating to me that it is the onboard nav state is not decreasing in altitude.
The good news, the HRN laser is now ready to fire.
So we heard that we have one good radio sending down data, one that has loss of signal. We have prop.
Standing by with a manual command for landed ops.
Yep.
No recommendation at this time.
Yep, we have prop telling us that we have good data. That was someone just commanding. We heard exec mode to go into this firing mode, and someone standing by to get into our landed ops mode. I'll wait for Dr. Crane to confirm here. But if we're pulling down data, we'll see how this goes. Looks like Tim's about ready to jump on the loop and sort out what we saw on the Viz versus what the folks inside of Mission Control are seeing on their monitors. It's a good reminder, too, this public channel that we're listening to here in the studio, Leah, and what people are listening to at home, at the landing party at Lone Star Flight Museum.
All right, folks. I'm showing that we are sensing lunar acceleration. So we're on the surface. Let's evaluate.
All right, let's continue to evaluate. I hear we do have a picture from a portion of the descent. Is that right over there? All right, so that's a picture during braking, about 10 kilometers up from the lunar surface that we do have while we wait for a little more information.
We can confirm the engine is still running, and therefore...
And we already have an image here.
If we were in a different configuration, the engine would have snuffed.
Okay, so we have confirmation, I believe that was from Con, that says the engine's still running. This picture you're looking at, 10 kilometers up during that braking burn.
So
that
the
powered
engine's in
descent
idle, which
initiation,
means it
that
has to
long
be
burn that
upright.
brought us 4,000 miles per hour braking burn. Incredible shot.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying as well.
All right, there's another view there. Looks like from this panel, we're looking at the garage. So that's Lunar Outpost Map Rover inside of that square right there, Leah. And this looks like it's probably about the same altitude, maybe about 10 meters above the surface. And one more here for everyone. It's about the same altitude there, maybe a little bit more exposure, but these...
Camera's still running in HRN mode.
These photos came down for us just a few moments ago. Wanted to share those before we jump back into Mission Control as flight controllers are looking at this dynamic situation and learning.
Yeah, go ahead and put us in landed ops. It looks like we're down. We need to evaluate that situation, and I'd like to get a picture.
As they say, picture it didn't happen.
Hello,
so Dr. Crane's onto it right there. A couple things here, Leah.
FM3402 was acknowledged.
Okay, the vehicle appears to be down. That's good. When they said that the engine is idling, that doesn't mean that it's burning or anything like that. It's just in idle mode, and it has to stay in that mode if the vehicle is upright. If the vehicle is not upright, then the engine would not be in idle mode. So it's starting to look like the vehicle's on the surface. What's weird is that they're not getting the kind of communications that they should right now.
I did hear Dr. Crane call out that they are getting readings for
Alright,
lunar
folks, we're moving to
acceleration.
the post-landing court procedure.
All right, Spark, I'm going to start shutting some stuff off as soon as we can.
Copy. Can you meet me on my loop, please?
Feed lines are inerting.
All right, so if we have enough data to be inerting feed lines, that means the engine's no longer running, and it's a state to bleed off that extra pressure. This is part of that safing bit that we talked about earlier, Leah. Looks like our CEO, Steve Altimus, just stepped into the room. That's in the bottom right hand of the box here, talking to the mission director, Dr. Tim Crane. He just called out telling Spark to turn some things off. That's because we need to remain in a power positive state, Leah, getting that top deck solar array into a spot where we are able to charge, but sometimes you have to turn a few things off to make sure that you're charging and not just burning through that power. All right, by my countdown clock, it's been about 22 minutes since we started that PDI, Leah.
Again, this is
And
very
again, we were
odd
anticipating landing at
that
about
we have this little
11:31
data and this little
a.m.
communication.
Central Time, 12:31 p.m. Eastern Time. It can get tricky with communications on the lander when you're in a...
Prop, do we have insight to tank pressure if we turn off the Mogies and the Iggies?
We would, yeah.
All right, that's code for the...
If you turn off Mogies,
Thank you, Robert.
cannot
Thank you.
inert or vent the tanks.
Yeah.
We can bring them back up though, right?
Yes,
How are my pressures?
they're low at this time.
Okay, turn off the Mogies and the Iggies. Going.
Could we turn everything off except the vent valves?
Yes.
That would be everything except MV103 and MV303.
All right, all this activity is regarding the lander's propulsion system. They're going through deciding on how to vent it. We heard two things there, Leah. We heard Mogies and Iggies. That's our motor engine gimbal system, right? And our Iggy is our igniter. So they're working through the process of safing this engine. At the top of the show, we talked about the priorities after touchdown, and being safe was first, followed by pulling down some health status information, and then images. And then just about 3 minutes ago, we heard Dr. Crane go ahead and say,
FM3403 acknowledged.
We'll prioritize images. It's just about 9 minutes after the expected landing. So let's hang tight and continue to watch this problem and challenges unfold inside of Mission Control. Each one going through, finding this challenge, each one getting solved here. It sounds like they're still working through venting the engine system.
Let's power off the Quasonics until we get a handle on what antenna we're going to pipe it through.
Copy. Quasonics is currently in idle mode.
Good enough, thank you.
Quasonics, that's our radio. There's 2 radio systems on the lander. It sounds like when we talk about that vehicle health status, we heard some things for prop. Vehicle health status includes being in a power positive state.
Spark 636 acknowledged.
So we are communicating, commanding the lander, and getting acknowledgments back that the lander is behaving as expected. So putting those things together while we wait for confirmation from Dr. Crane. We have an engine that is shut down. We are venting the engine.
Spark 637 acknowledged.
We are getting acknowledged commands from the lander. Standing by for confirmation from Dr. Crane.
And just a recap of some of the timelines
All right,
so far today.
to upgrade
We
you
have
guys on
power
it,
descent
update
initiations
rather everybody
start
about what
25
just took place here. The landing technically took place about 10 minutes ago.
Power descent
And as
initiation
near
is the
as
braking burn that
right now, its communications seem to have an issue at the moment. The lander is responding to commands. The engine has shut down. It is responding to all of the instructions that it's receiving. So it appears to be operational. The weird thing is that we don't have the type of active communication with the lander as one would expect. We're not getting that landing confirmation that one would expect. So if we can just, if Intuitive Machines can resolve these communications issues, that should wrap us for the day. We should be good. But if they can't, if there's some sort of problem with the antenna, we're going to have to see. So right now, the best we can do is just sit and wait, see what happens next. And you're right, Dexters, it didn't crash. It didn't crash. The question is it damaged in some way? Or is it malfunctioning on the communication side?
We did hear that they were going into
640 acknowledged.
commanded landed ops. So can you walk us through some of what that means? I know that includes safing the engine as well.
Right, so there's different modes that we need to command, right? At the beginning of PDI, we hear the command for exec mode, all right?
Spark 641 acknowledged.
That's executing the burn maneuver, right? When we switch over into landed ops, it's a different setting on the lander in order for us to go through those steps, safing the vehicle first and foremost, that liquid methane, liquid oxygen engine.
Yep, bring it down. Also, FM, I'd like a recommendation on whether or not we keep Talos 1 up or if we bring it down.
It's going to be a decision on up and down for radios based on
bring it down
power.
for now. We're taking the same pictures.
I would not recommend powering down Talos.
Carl, thank you so much. Really appreciate the $5. Thank you so much. Wow, that's your first ever super chat.
He did say
I'm honored. Thank you so much.
pictures.
He did say pictures, yes. So hoping to see the status of Athena on the lunar surface soon. We were initially expecting pictures would take
Yes,
a couple
Mike,
of hours to come
that's
down.
possible. That happened the last
as
time.
the flight teams prioritized downloading data and safing the vehicle, but this will help us better understand the configuration of the lander.
Spark 642 acknowledged.
Every time we hear Michaela come on the tunes
Order,
there,
can you zoom in on this view? Actually, give me the spacecraft view.
Spark 644 acknowledged.
getting all these acknowledgements coming through.
No, take task down.
All right, we're going to see here. Looks like Tim's
Star
got a good
trackers
spot. Keep powering down things that we're not using anymore. Mission director looks like he's looking up at the screen. Maybe they're looking at a little bit of data that we do not have in front of us. Still standing by for confirmation. But we've heard a few steps go through the process, venting the lander's system, hopefully pulling down data inside of mission control, confirming Athena's status on the surface. And then finally, it sounds like we've heard a couple mentions of pictures. We've shown a couple from that descent stage. And we're just going to keep standing by, looking into Nova Control here in Houston, Texas, just down the street from Johnson Space Center, to find out the situation inside of the IM-2 mission with Athena's touchdown. Again, that was about...
Yeah, this is another thing. They're getting a lot of responses from the vehicle. That's all good signs that there are different systems and subsystems that are responding, saying, are you there? Yeah, I'm there. Are you there? Yeah, I'm there. The problem is they're going through this process of shutting systems down rapidly as well. We've heard them say that a number of times, meaning that they're trying to save power. The question is, did the vehicle land upright? Did it topple over like the last time? If so, then they're not getting the solar energy that they need. Are they not pulling as much power as they need to keep the vehicle in operation? Again, this is real critical that this thing landed upright. If it isn't, they're going to run out of power soon on their batteries, and the vehicle will be dead. It is, of course, that's just speculation. We have no reason to believe that that's what's happening here, but they are shutting systems down to try to conserve power right now.
Trying to work those, but we are charging, which is a very key element to this mission. Looks like the room's filling up with our subject matter experts. Just continue working on this challenge to see where we stand.
Spark 649 acknowledged.
If you see
DS is back in low rate.
You see folks walking on the bottom right hand of your screen underneath the camera. That's because the room's situational awareness is about a 65-inch TV sitting underneath of there. So what they're pointing at could be data, could be confirmation.
Thanks for the $5. I really appreciate it. Second set of legs on the side. You know, I just think, honestly, if it toppled over again, if that's what happened here, that's a design flaw at that point. And I think they really need to look at making a more squat lander. But again, we don't know that that happened for sure. We can't say that at all right now. This is all speculation.
We are sending commands to the vehicle. We have shut off equipment that has not been necessary. We know that we have an engine that has been shut off. We've commanded the vehicle into
yes, Sue, it is charging. The problem is it may not be charging enough.
Dr. Tim Crane that we are generating
if it toppled over and it's on its side, or if it's leaning, all the solar panels on this thing are on the top. And so if it's not oriented correctly, it could be charging partially, but not enough.
During flight.
So, again, not sure. Fingers crossed here.
Now we're just standing by to hear what the full situation is. About 16 and a half minutes since nominal landing time, and a little over 31 minutes since Athena commanded her final engine burn.
Spark 651 acknowledged.
Like you said, Josh, we are communicating.
Order, go ahead and turn on the displays for all the antennas.
We're communicating.
So you're going to see everyone looking up at the screen here. So when they're calling back to order, that's actually
Spark 652
in the
acknowledged.
back left of the bottom right monitor. They're changing screens inside the room, situational awareness television up front, right in front of the mission director. He just asked to pull up the antenna configurations, trying to figure out
653 acknowledged
which one's pointing back toward Earth, which might be the best one to use. Towards the top of the show and during PDI, when things got a little spicy, we talked about multipath, Leah, and that's something that we expect to happen on the South Pole. It's something we learned from during IM-1, quite frankly, with Odie. Being on the surface and radio waves taking multiple paths to get to the same destination. Multipath exists down on the lunar surface just because there are so many different ways. And during IM-1, we were sending out signals that were bouncing off the surface, bouncing off of craters, and making their way back to Earth. We took I think it was a Saturday and a Sunday to learn a little bit more about the multipath situation. You mentioned, Leah, Odysseus.
All right, we've got some information that there is data going through the Goon Hilly Earth Station that is in Cornwall.
And learning about those things.
We've got friends there, both the
Intuitive Machines'
producer
Lunar Data Network,
and I have
comprised of ground
friends at
stations
Goon Hilly Earth
all over the
Station in
globe.
Cornwall.
The largest
They are
one of them
responsible.
works
They
so
are
far.
part of, not exactly part of the NASA Deep Space Network. They support it. However, it's an independent communication station, and they are getting data from the lander. That's very good news. Very good news
but that really is what
indeed.
helped us
Thanks to
pick
our
up those
friends
weak
at
radio
Goon Hilly
signals for
for that
IM-1.
information.
That's not the dish we're on right now.
Jim,
but
thank
it
you
seems
so
like we
much
do
for the
have a
tenor.
great
Really,
connection from
really
the vehicle.
appreciate your
I believe
support.
that
Thank you
dish
so
we're using
much.
right now is GHY6 in Goon Hilly, but I don't have that confirmation right in front of me.
AD, this is Prop. Can you confirm what is getting powered down?
Everything we can right now, Prop.
Copy.
They're powering down these systems aboard the lander because it does take quite a bit of energy to land, but we did hear good confirmation that we are also generating power.
Yeah, all these commands that are going to Spark. Spark is code for avionics, right? That's where our power is being allocated on the lander. And we've heard a lot of confirmations of things being turned off. We heard Dr. Crane say we are generating solar power. At last check, we heard mission director call out to look at the antenna configuration on the room's situational awareness model screen, and we're still standing by to see where this is going to go.
Yes, power down the chrosonics until we're ready to use it.
Go ahead, sorry, producer.
It's about 20 minutes now since our intended landing time today.
Yeah.
Again, we were expecting that around 11:30 a.m. Central.
Can you please confirm where you're getting this information from, producer?
Intuitive Machines in Houston, Texas, just down the street from Johnson Space Center, continuing to evaluate the status of the spacecraft. Continuing to communicate with the spacecraft itself.
All right. So here's
a photo
what we're hearing
help
at
us
the
confirm
moment.
its
Goon
orientation.
Hilly Earth Station. Fortunately,
I'm just
we
gonna wait
do
one and listen
have
in
some
for
friends
a couple
there. They
cues coming
provide
into
an
the studio
important
here.
part
Bear with
of
us, folks.
NASA's communications network these days. It's something that they didn't used to have, and that is they're getting a signal from the vehicle. It's definitely on the surface, but they aren't confident of the orientation. This is what I was worried about. They're not sure if it's upright. And if that is indeed the case, if it's not upright, leaning over, something along those lines. By the way, we've lost communication with Intuitive Machines. They're going to go ahead and work these issues now, and they have nothing else to tell us at this point, yeah, they've totally cut their feed at this point. So here's again what we're getting from Goonhilly. Yes, we're getting communications. Yes, the vehicle is on the surface of the moon. However, as happened before, although it seems to me that if the orientation is wrong, it might be for different reasons this time. The vehicle may not be oriented properly to get enough power onto its solar panels. Again, the way this thing is built, the solar panels are on the top of the vehicle, and if it's leaning in a way that isn't ideal, or if it falls over, or and a variety of different ways that the orientation might be messed up, then it's not going to get enough power to keep its systems on. It will drain its batteries in no time, and then it will simply die. Is certainly hope that that's not the case. So right now they're going through their recovery mode, the recovery methods, recovery procedures, to shut down all the unnecessary systems, bring everything down on the lander except what is absolutely necessary to communicate with it, and try to confirm exactly what the orientation is. If the orientation is bad, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's game over. What it might mean is that they're going to have to operate systems in order. In other words, okay, we'll turn this experiment on and this experiment only because we're only getting this much power. We'll complete that experiment, then shut it down. We'll turn this next experiment on, have it run, then shut it down. We'll launch the hopper. The hopper has its own solar panels. We'll launch that and send it out to do its job. We'll send a rover out, that sort of thing. All of these things might still theoretically be possible as long as this lander is receiving at least some solar power. But at the same time, if it's not receiving enough, then we could have a mission failure here. Let's hope that that's not the case. We certainly don't know that for certain, and we're probably not going to know that for a little while. And Intuitive Machines probably isn't going to tell the public and the media for an even longer period of time. So once again, thanks to our friends at Goonhilly, who have been providing us with this information. Again, Goonhilly has not said that there is definitely a problem with the lander or anything like that. They've just said that they are getting data and they don't have confirmation of the orientation right now. That's all we know right now from Goonhilly. So, and once again, such a critical part of the communications network for interplanetary communications. This is something that Starlink can't do unless we built a communications network all the way out to the moon, which Elon hasn't done yet. Without that, it is these types of systems, this type of infrastructure that allows this kind of communication. And once again, Goonhilly in Cornwall, right here in the UK, is an absolutely critical part of that communications network. So props to them, and props to Intuitive Machines because they have at least got the vehicle down on the surface of the moon. Let's hope that they will be able to bring it up to at least enough of a level of operative functionality to where it can get its job done. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, we have Starship launching in just a few hours, guys. SpaceX and Flight 8 of Starship. That is also immensely important to the future of Artemis. So stay tuned, and until next time, stay angry about space.